Gawain, poet. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Arthurian legend isn't just about round tables, sword fights, and noble quests. It's a world governed by impossible standards, where knights pledge themselves to truth, loyalty, and chastity, only to be thrust into trials designed to unravel those very ideals. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, a late 14th century poem written in richly alliterative verse, stands out as one of the most psychologically complex and quietly disquieting stories in that tradition. Unlike other tales in the Arthurian cycle, this one doesn't revolve around dragon slaying or courtly romance. Its weapon of choice is uncertainty. One of Camelot's most celebrated knights is drawn into a challenge that begins in a spirit of ceremony and politeness and gradually darkens into something colder, more intimate, and far harder to answer with strength alone. The real test isn't one of courage or might, but of consistency, a steady commitment to one's values when the rules keep shifting and the stakes refuse to clarify. At first, the challenge seems almost theatrical, a test with clear terms. But as the story unfolds, it becomes clear that what's being measured isn't honour in public, but integrity in private. The prize isn't glory, it's self-respect. In this way, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is a story of slow unravelling, of surfaces carefully maintained and motives lurking just beneath. It's a world of snow, silence, seduction and symbolism, where even the most well-armoured knight finds no protection from doubt, and where virtue turns out to be far harder to live by than it is to declare. If you've ever tried to hold yourself to a code only to find that real life doesn't always play fair, then Gawain's about to keep you company. A promise more dangerous than a sword. A festive banquet at King Arthur's court sets the stage. Amid music, feasting, and laughter, a green-skinned knight on horseback rides into the great hall. Towering and strange, he carries not a sword, but a holly branch and an axe. He doesn't threaten war. Instead, he offers a challenge. Any knight may strike him a single blow, so long as he agrees to receive the same blow in return exactly 1 year and 1 day later. The reward? The axe itself, handed over as a gift. Arthur rises to accept the challenge, but before he can act, Gawain steps forward. As the king's nephew and one of the premier knights of the Round Table, he insists on taking the blow himself, framing it as a fitting task for one of the youngest and least proven among them. Taking the axe, Gawain delivers a powerful strike, beheading the Green Knight on the spot. But the game is not over. The Green Knight picks up his head and reminds Gawain of the bargain. Come find him at the Green Chapel in a year and take the same blow in return. The hall falls silent as the nature of the challenge becomes clear. What was framed as a festive jest now stands revealed as a deadly pact. Gawain's swift acceptance, met with laughter and applause, has locked him into a binding, life-threatening obligation. As the following year begins to turn, that single moment at court grows only heavier in his mind. What once looked like a moment of chivalric pride becomes something lonelier, stranger, and far more difficult to outrun. The short-lived jest was over in an instant, but the consequences of his actions have only just begun. The weight of a promise kept. As the end of the year approaches, Gawain prepares to ride out alone. He doesn't stall or negotiate. He doesn't look for a way out. He celebrates the holidays one last time with the court and then quietly arms himself for the journey. His mood isn't proud or bold. It's dutiful. The gift-giving, laughter, and feasts fade behind him as he rides toward a place no one else even believes exists. But that doesn't matter. He made a vow. Gawain's journey is harsh. Through the frozen forests of North Wales, he rides alone, battling snow, sleepless nights, wild beasts, and the biting cold. He sleeps in his armour, prays for shelter, and fends off whatever threatens him. But what weighs on him most isn't the physical toll, it's the silence. No one he meets has heard of the Green Chapel. Many insist it doesn't exist. Still, he keeps riding, keeps asking, never slowing. It's not courage that drives him. It's obligation. When he finally reaches a castle near his destination, he's days from his deadline and no closer to his goal. He tells his host plainly that he's looking for the Green Knight and must find the chapel by New Year's Day. For Gawain, the real threat isn't the return blow. It's the shame of not showing up. No one is forcing him. He could stay in safety and let the date pass, but the thought doesn't seem to occur to him. The Green Knight's axe may have drawn the blood, but the promise is what cuts deepest. Temptation wears a gentle face. The castle feels like a blessing. Warmth, food, companionship, everything Gawain has lacked on the road is suddenly offered without question. The lord of the castle is open-handed and jovial. The household treats him with admiration, not pity. Everything at first glance seems generous, welcoming, and safe. And then it shifts. Over the days that follow, the welcome becomes more complicated. Gawain is waited on, entertained, drawn into easy conversation and quietly placed under pressure. Each morning, before the rest of the house stirs, the lady of the castle enters his room alone. She's gracious, sharp-witted, and persistent. Her words are playful, her gaze direct, her tone just coy enough to keep Gawain off balance. She never forces anything. Instead, she insists she's the one trapped, that she cannot help but love him, that he owes her some return. Nothing about it looks like a threat, and that's what makes it dangerous. It's a test, not of arms, not of courage, but of self-restraint and clarity. Gawain is bound by chivalry to be courteous to ladies. He's also bound by loyalty not to betray his host. These obligations blur quickly when the advance becomes wrapped in flattery and suggestion. To reject her too forcefully would be discourteous. To accept would be disloyal. He walks a tightrope day after day. Meanwhile, the lord of the castle proposes a separate game. Whatever Gawain gains in the house each day, he must exchange with the lord at night. It seems simple enough. On the first day, Gawain receives a kiss from the lady, and so he offers the lord a kiss in return. The next day, 2 kisses. The pattern holds. The game feels light-hearted, even absurd, but the stakes are rising quietly beneath it. What looks like leisure becomes a layered trap. Hospitality hides pressure. Politeness conceals power. Gawain entered the castle seeking rest. What he finds instead is a test designed not to break his body, but to press against the edges of who he believes himself to be. When honour meets fear and pride. On the 3rd day of this exchange game with the lord and lady, the terms seem to change. She gives him not only kisses, but a gift, a green girdle said to have the power to protect the wearer from death. She tells him to keep it secret, and he does. So close to his day of reckoning with the Green Knight, his temptation has shifted. It's no longer physical, but existential. Gawain, who has faced down monsters and hardship without hesitation, now sees an opening, a way to live through the challenge ahead. He doesn't return the girdle to the lord. He hides it. Just one choice, made in fear, hidden behind a courteous smile. And it's in that small act, not in the kisses or flirtation, that the test finds its mark. By the time he leaves the castle for the Green Chapel, he's outwardly intact, courteous, composed, and ready. But inwardly, he's compromised. The green girdle tied around his waist is both a shield and a secret. It marks the point where survival began to outweigh his honesty. And it stays hidden, not just from the Lord, but from the version of himself Gawain is trying to maintain. The meeting with the Green Knight is staged like an execution. Gawain kneels. The axe is raised. The first swing stops short, a feint, a reminder. The second is another tease testing his nerve. On the third, the axe grazes his neck, drawing blood but sparing his life. The knight then reveals everything. The castle, the lady, the entire ordeal was a test. The Lord and the Green Knight are the same man. The kisses were passed on as agreed, but the girdle, the one gift Gawain concealed, is the one failure. Gawain is devastated. He calls himself a coward, a traitor, a disgrace. He curses the girdle as a symbol of his weakness and begs to be absolved. But the Green Knight sees it differently. Gawain, he says, has proven himself as virtuous as any man can reasonably be, braver than most, faltering only out of the most human of fears, the fear of death. A flaw reveals more honesty than perfection. When Gawain returns to Camelot, he doesn't come back as a triumphant hero. He returns as a man marked, literally and symbolically. The nick on his neck, drawn by the Green Knight's axe, is a physical reminder of his failure to fully uphold the terms of their agreement. The green girdle, tied around his waist, becomes a sign of that same shortcoming. But while others might see it as a token of survival or cleverness, Gawain treats it as a scar of shame. He tells the court the entire story without excuse or spin. He confesses his concealment of the girdle, his fear of death, and the moment he chose self-preservation over truth. He doesn't downplay it. He doesn't laugh it off. He casts himself as a coward and a sinner, someone who, in a moment of testing, failed to meet the very ideals he claims to uphold. It's not the act itself that tortures him, but what it suggests, that the image of the perfect knight he tried to embody is, at best, a performance. But the reaction from the court is not what he expects. The knights don't scold him. They don't question his honour. Instead, they choose to wear green girdles themselves, not to shame him, but to celebrate his honesty. In their eyes, his willingness to confess, to own his flaw, and to keep his word even after breaking it reveals more character than if he had passed the test unscathed. That reversal is key. Gawain holds himself to a standard so high it allows no cracks. But the story suggests something more nuanced. That imperfection, acknowledged and examined, can be a deeper form of truth. The ideal knight isn't the one who never slips. It's the one who recognizes the slip, refuses to hide it, and accepts the cost. Gawain sets out to prove his virtue. What he proves instead is his humanity. And in doing so, he becomes something rarer than flawless. He becomes real. You've just listened to our blink to Sir Gawain and the Green Knight by the anonymous Gawain poet. Here's a brief recap and analysis of the epic Arthurian poem. From the moment the Green Knight enters Camelot, everything is framed as a game. The challenge he proposes sounds theatrical, even absurd. One blow now, one in return a year later. The court laughs. The mood is light. No one, including Gawain, seemed to fully grasp the seriousness beneath the spectacle, but what started as a performance quickly reveals itself to be something far more exacting. The Green Knight never breaks the rules. He keeps to the bargain with unnerving precision. He allows Gawain to strike. He reminds him of the terms, and when the time comes, he appears at the appointed place, axe in hand, ready to follow through. There's no threat, no trickery, only the cold enforcement of a deal Gawain freely accepted. The game at the castle follows a similar arc. On the surface, it appears light-hearted, a daily exchange of winnings, some harmless flirtation, and a jovial host who seems unconcerned by his guests' growing intimacy with the lady of the house. But layer by layer it becomes clear that the rules aren't just a diversion. They're a mechanism to reveal Gawain's instincts, what he'll give, what he'll hide, and how he'll justify the difference. The lady's visits aren't accidental, the gifts aren't innocent. Everything has been set up to expose. By the time Gawain faces the axe again, he's no longer playing, he's bracing for judgment. The Green Knight delivers it not through punishment, but through clarity. The nicks of the blade match the honesty of the actions. none for the days Gawain was truthful, one sharp graze for the day he wasn't. The final blow isn't fatal, it's symbolic and surgical. Gawain went into the challenge expecting combat. What he receives is an audit of his character. His failure isn't measured in blood, but in the margin between who he claimed to be and what he actually did. The game, it turns out, was never just a game. It was a mirror, and it never stopped watching. What began as a festive game at Camelot quickly turned into a test of one knight's ability to live up to an impossible standard. Through cold forests, private temptations, and quiet betrayals, Gawain learns that true character isn't about perfection, it's about what happens after you fall short. Beneath the armour and ceremony lies a story about honesty, shame, and how even the smallest choices can reveal who you really are. Okay, that's it for this Blink. We hope you enjoyed it. If you can, please take the time to leave us a rating. We always appreciate your feedback. And we'll see you in the next Blink.